We are here at the Austin Comic-Con with Terry Naughton. He's a animator with Disney, or was an animator with Disney for many, many years. He worked on The Lion King, he worked on Aladdin, and he worked on Beauty and the Beast. He's also an author. What are you doing here at the Comic-Con?
Right now, I'm actually working with Peter and Angie. We're promoting the children's book that we put out. We have two of them, actually. One called My Favorite Giant. Another one is Growing Up Giant. That was done by Dawn DeJour. The book that I did with Peter is actually a book on not judging people. So it's, let me get one here real quick.
Grab one of the books.
There's the book right there. And basically what the book is Peter grew up and was actually ridiculed, even though he was this giant, and everybody thought, well, they would leave him alone. It was the opposite. They actually kind of like ridiculed him and such, and so he decided that he'd do a book and teaching kids about how not to judge people until you've met them. So if the person is in a wheelchair, or if they're a different color than you are, or different, or blind or something, before you make a judgment, how about talking to them? And that's what this book is about. And
that sounds really inspirational.
Yeah, it's a nice book, and it was very fun to illustrate it. I did it in kind of a Norman Rockwell style, so and it's got a lot of blurbs so that the kids can read it. So
that's great.
It makes it fun. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
So what was like the inspiration behind the particular style that you used for this?
We went through a couple. Because I was an animator, the first thing I tried to do was to talk them into doing much more of a caricature style or even a cartoon style. And even though they liked the drawings, but they were saying they wanted something else. So when they looked at I do a wide variety of work. We got to this kind of a Norman Rockwell style, and they said that's what we want for our book. So instead of being a cartoony type, it's more of a Rockwell style.
Looks really great.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your history as an animator with Disney. When did you start animating for Disney?
Now, the funny thing, it's kind of odd.
CalArts?
No, that's the funny thing was, I was trained as an illustrator, not an animator, and really had no. I mean, when I was a kid, like anybody else, I want to draw for Disney. And then I did a little bit of animation here and there, just some storyboarding stuff. And I thought, man, this ain't for me at all. And I was going to school called Art Center in Pasadena, down the road from CalArts. One of my instructors saw my sketchbook and stuff, and he said, kid, I can get you a job at Disney right now. I was like, well, I'd like to graduate first, but and I'm really an illustrator, but let me think about it. So sure enough, I told him that I would. He set up an interview. He told me he knew somebody, right? He knew the president of the entire studio. So I'm thinking to myself, boy, Jack Linwood, when you know somebody, you really know somebody.
Yeah.
So they guided me over to animation, and 4 or 5 interviews later, I was able to I was able to be hired, but it was very difficult. I didn't even know how to flip. They had to do the flipping stuff. I had no idea. I would sit, I had a light table. I'm tracing things. I'm turning drawings. Luckily, one of the guys had pity on me, looked at me, and he says, let me show you a little something, and showed me how to flip. Because if I hadn't learned how to do this within 2 weeks, I was fired. I was off production.
So it was a real trial by fire then.
Yeah. And then once you were on production, if you made it, you had to kind of like hang in there for 3 months, or they would fire you again. And then it was 6 months. And then finally, after about a year, when I finished the first film, they kind of said, you can hang around. And they had 10 of us. And all 10 of us made it through that gauntlet. It was hard. But so that's how I got into it. I sort of fell into it. And I kind of told myself, well, I'll do this for a couple of 3 or 4 years, and then I'll get back to my illustration. Well, 20 years later, well, I always do my illustration all the way through it, and did freelance work, but I animated for about 20 years. Yeah.
So what was the culture like back in the 80s and the 90s working at the animation studio?
The culture was awesome. And I'm gonna do a shameless plug for a movie that's out there. It's called Waking Sleeping Beauty. If you want to know what it's like, get Waking Sleeping Beauty or find it and take a look at it. Randy Cartwright set it up. And it just so happened that they started to do that film about 6 months before I got there, early 85. I got there in November of 85. And it takes you through what it was like to be there. And it was fun. We were goofy. I tell people what it was a bunch of 30, 40, 50, in some cases 60-year-old 12-year-olds. I mean, we played. The people across the street used to call us the children. You know, these children are making you $1 billion. But that's what it was. We figured if we're 12-year-olds, then we'll draw things that 12-year-olds like to see and stuff. And it was fun. I mean, like I said, we would be having this interview right now, and somebody would come by and shoot a rubber band at us. And I mean, it would be with that, and then I would be fully loaded, and so I would fire back, and that's how it was. It was really fun.
That sounds really great.
It was fun. And now it was a lot of work. That was the other thing too. I remember that somebody, when I went in first for one of my interviews, I said, well, what's our dress code here? And Don Hahn said, well, what can you work 12 to 14 to 16 hours a day in? That kind of gave me a clue. I was like, huh, okay. And I was telling you guys a little earlier, I can't tell you how many times I had pizza at my desk at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning through I don't know how many times, how many movies, just constantly. But labor of love kind of stuff. I remember they tried to pull me off of an overtime situation one time. And they said, you realize we can't pay you for this because of, union obligations and all that stuff. I said, yeah, but you got to understand something. If I don't do this work right now, and if I don't get it done this way, this scene will not be as good as it was in the movie. And sometimes the money people don't get it. It's not always about the money. It's about the history that you made, or like Beauty and the Beast. I mean, when we were making that, we made history.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky enough to say, hey, I was part of making history. Did I get paid? Well, in some cases I did, in some cases I didn't. But I got paid in the old one. It was fun.
So the animation industry in the recent years has started to move toward two things. It's moving toward limited animation strongly, and it's moving toward 3D animation. What are your thoughts on that?
As my thoughts on that is this. I love all of those mediums. I'm a huge fan of CGI stuff, of all of the 3D stuff that's coming out. I like anime. I like all the stop motion stuff. My whole thing is like any kind of art, there's room for it all. Why all of a sudden get up there and say, well, CGI is it, throw away the 2D animation? Would you get up there and say, oil paintings are great, so throw away all the watercolors? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
And I don't know why the industry, and it's industry-wide, it's not just Disney, DreamWorks and all of them. I don't know why they're doing that. And I don't know if the general public, screams for it or not. But that's one thing. Obviously, if the general public starts screaming for it, they're going to do it because, let's face it, those guys are in it to make money. Okay, you don't make money with an animated flick, then guess what? They're not going to do it again. Right now, they're killing it with CGI, and it's awesome stuff. I don't know if you saw Rio.
I haven't seen that one yet. But
awesome flick. And of course, I love The Incredibles. Oh God, that's fun stuff. So yeah, that's my take on it. I don't dislike it. I don't hate it. I love it all. I just think that there's room for everything. Think of this. If you don't think there's room for everything, can you imagine Snow White in 3D?
Honestly, no.
The charm, it's just gone. I'm sorry. I mean, I love it. I'm not even a big fan of Mickey Mouse in 3D. It's just...
Yeah, I've seen that. It just doesn't look right to me. It doesn't.
He's kind of a 2D character. Let's keep him 2D. Whereas, vice versa. The Incredibles. Who can see any of those guys 2D? I mean, that would work, but they're just better. Or Toy Story. It's
certain stories that work better for a particular type of movie.
Gotta be 3D. I mean, I'm sure it would work 2D, but it'd be better, better 3D.
They did have like a 2D animation little show, didn't they?
Yeah.
It wasn't that great.
I mean, it was okay. But like I said, it's just it'd be better that way, I think. So that's my take on it. I mean, I think they're all great. They have their places. Pick and choose as to which one would be better for your story. That's the key thing about animation anyway, about any filmmaking is what's your story. That's the thing. So if this helps you build your story, then do it that way. If you want a nice little charming thing, then maybe you do it this way. So whichever enhances your story. That's my take on it.
I'm sure some of our audience are fledgling animators themselves that want to get into the industry. What would be the best pieces of advice you could give to them?
Two things. One, draw until your fingers bleed. I mean, you've got to draw. It all starts with that. It all starts with a pencil to paper, whether you're going to do CGI, whether you're going to do any kind of artwork. You've got to start with pencil and paper and draw. If you want to get into animation, draw life, draw action, go to the zoo, try this. Try watching a baseball game or a football game and draw it while you're watching. You know what I mean? You got to capture motion. You're not drawing from a still photo. You got to capture that motion, and you got to see it. So you draw that. Draw constantly. Draw live action stuff. Then nowadays too, if you want to get into animation, my big thing, learn CGI. Maya, whatever those programs are out there now, learn them. It's another arrow in your quiver. So now you're a well-rounded animator. You can draw, you can animate and draw, you can animate and CGI and do it. You can build models, you can do the whole bit. So know your craft, study all aspects of your craft, and get really good at it. When I was doing it, it was all about line work, drawing, and we didn't do any CGI at the time. So I didn't. And then I tried to learn some of the CGI stuff, and it's not my gig. You know, I really like the hand drawn stuff. But that's my advice to them. Do it that way.
Well, thank you so much for this time, sir. I mean, I hope you have a great time at the convention as well.
Yeah, man.
And hope that we continue to see more great things from you in the printed.
Can I do a quick plug for
Oh,
my
yes,
book?
of course.
There's my book. If you ever, you can go online. You can go to Hound Comics. I've got a new book out. This doesn't have any Disney stuff. It's got a lot of my paintings and a lot of my. But I do have something that would be very helpful to people who want to get animation. In the back, I've got my sketchbook, and the sketchbook will show you a lot of the things that you would need for a portfolio to get in there. So it's called The Art of Terry Naughton. Get that through Hound Comics, and I so appreciate you giving me the time.
So we're already starting to see great things from you then.
I'm working at it. I'm trying to make it happen. See if I can go.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, I tell
Appreciate
you
it.
what, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you.